Okay. Welcome, everyone, to Practice Live. This is a monthly conversation where we drop in with folks from all over the world and we talk about what it means to really be here. Because so many of us are distracted from really being here. And it's really a practice to truly be with ourselves and with each other. Today's guest is very special to me because she's my sister. She's my sister. We just found out there's a fly on my nose. We just found out not this last March, but the March before that we were related and that we existed. Um, and sometimes when you're in your midlife and you find out you have a sibling, it's not cool. But it turns out that it can be very cool to find out that you have a sister. And particularly I'm just so I said this in my Instagram stories this morning. I'm like, I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you. I'm proud to be your sister. I don't think I've really felt a lot of pride in my life outside of my siblings, and to encounter you and to see how you approach life and your practices, your movement practice and strength practices, and also how you've worked the last year of your life, which has a lot of stuff in it. And I'm so grateful that we elegantly were situated in each other's lives right now, because here we are. But yeah, so I don't know. We're just going to kind of dive in today because it's somebody that I know. Often with Practice Live, it's somebody that I'm getting to know in the conversation. But I'd love to turn this over to you and invite you to speak a bit for yourself, Stacie. What's important for us to know about who you are, where you come from, how you spend your time? What's important to you?
Okay. I know I was also supposed to write a bio for this, which I think I failed to do. Because what I'm working on right now is running a full-time business, a part-time business, raising 2 children that are still home, and I have one in college. I have 2 dogs, and I was accepted into the master's degree program for early childhood education at the University of Maine in Farmington on a scholarship in March of this year. And that was not something that I was in a position to turn down. So I'm also working on a master's degree. So all of those things make my time really short. And I have Post-it notes everywhere telling me what I need to do. And sometimes they fall off the wall. So I think that the one where I was supposed to write my bio fell off the wall. So I told a lot about myself just in that, but my main business that I run is a nature-based and art-based preschool. This was a dream of mine from my early 20s. I was in an associate's degree program for early education at Southern Maine Community College. And we had to do a project where we designed our ideal early childhood classroom. And mine was one that, weather permitting in Southern Maine, we could have the doors open and children would have indoor and outdoor access throughout the day. So I almost have that, although I do not let children constantly run in and out of my house because that's not safe. But they do have a pretty decent chunk of outdoor access throughout the day. So I was able to do that. And then so there's a lot of practicing that comes with being an early childhood teacher. One of those things is patience. I say people tell me I have a lot of patience. My patience muscle is kind of calloused. It's got a nice barrier on it. Because I just use it so much. And then my other practice, which I did write a little bit about, we can talk some more about it later, is I'm a fitness and dance instructor at Hustle and Flow Studio. on Brackett Street in Portland, Maine. And I've been there for, I think we're going on our 11th year. So I was there when the studio opened and just fell in love with the owner. I'll give her a shout out. Her name's Stephanie Harmon. And she had a vision for an eclectic movement studio that was just inclusive and welcoming in the broadest sense of the word. And she really was able to create that. And so I've been plugged into my own hour-long slots there for about 10 years. And it's been just the past 3 years that I've really had my own class that I developed that has taken off. So I'm pretty proud of that. Yeah. That's my bio, right?
I love your bio. I was like, I'm not waiting for this bio anymore. I'm just going to post, I'm going to post the thing about the live. Oh man. What, just to unpack pieces of this a little bit, what brought you into early education? What excites you about companioning kids at that stage of life? And what is it evoke from you, or what does it bring to you?
I love that question. I think that I am one of the people, I think we could be a little rare. I know others. They don't seem as rare to me because I'm in this field, so I know them. Where really this profession chooses you. And it's kind of a blessing and a curse to be in this field, because once you're in it and so it's very empathetic people tend to do this work. And once you're connected and you're connected with the work, and you're using your empathy and you're practicing your patience, and you really master some of those skills, there's nothing else on the planet that will ever satisfy you as much as working with young children. And yes, they're cute, and yes, they're funny, and yes, there's Play-Doh and snack time. But it's really about having relationships with humans during a time in their life when they're so sensitive to just your own energy, the grown-up energy in the space, and their relationship. Their development is based on the safety and security that they feel from the relationship with their caregivers and teachers, in just a way that comes around no other time during human development. So I, like many people in the field, started babysitting when I was really young, and then
Ooh, we lost Stacie for a sec. We'll give her a moment to come back. And I'm going to check in with her and let her know. She said she froze and she'll be back. I so love what she's talking about this stage of development, and how the presence of the people around a child in this stage really matters, because of the sensitivity that we have, and that safety is really built on that sensitivity. Yeah, what you were just talking about is so profound, and I was just kind of reflecting on that a little bit in the in between of like how what I would say is alchemical. This stage of early childhood development is really alchemical. Like, it's not about what you do or say so much; it's about your presence, and the energy of your presence, the patience of your presence, that actually cultivates a person's development. And that there aren't other stages of like that, and there aren't stages like that throughout the rest of our lives. Like, that's really special. I've heard parts of this from a clinical standpoint, and it was really cool to hear you just talk about this from like an empathetic lens, or like a human lens, and I felt what you were talking about differently than the way I've heard it before. So that was just rad. Keep going. All to say, keep
All
going.
right. Hopefully I don't get any more spam calls, because that's why I got booted off this. That was weird. I think what I was trying to say is that I noticed children and any vulnerable type of people, because I did used to work with adults with intellectual disabilities for years, being attracted to me at a really early age. Like, I remember being out in public places with a friend or a family member, and they'd say, wow, people just stop and tell you their life story, like in line at the grocery store. And I'm not always a good listener. I also talk a lot. So it wasn't that. There was this other piece where children especially would just feel safe around me. And because they felt safe around me and wanted to be around me, I felt good about that and wanted to be around them, and their parents wanted them to be around me. So it kind of forced me into learning patience and learning my own self-regulation and emotional regulation, because if I wanted to be in those spaces with children, I needed to be really good at that. So that's kind of how it chooses you. You don't just wake up one day and have patience and empathy. Well, you can have empathy. That can be a natural gift, but and being able to manage the chaos and the overstimulation, those things take time. But I think it is that piece of like safety and security that certain people in educational fields across the board, birth through age 5 is really where I'm at, but all the way through any type of teacher, even teachers of adults, have that natural safety that other people feel, I think, when they're around them. And Meg has that, which I think is why we got along so quickly. I was like, oh, you have it too. And you were like, you have it too. And then we were like, great, now we can have that for each other, in a world where it feels like when you're just giving yourself out, there's no one to kind of catch you.
Yeah. Yep. It's been really profound to have family for me in general, but like definitely to have family that reflected my natural state. We're not the same, which is really cool. Like we're not the same, but it's like amazing how related we are. Because like you, when I was from like very young, people started telling me everything about themselves. And my path has also mirrored that development of patience. And I would say it's also been a development of how I'm empathetic. That I think for a long time I was absorbent in my empathy, and I've increasingly become gently reflective in my empathy. I'm not taking people's stuff on, but I'm also not like spitting it back to them, in a harsh mirroring kind of way of like, you do this. It's like a conversation of development and growth. Yeah, that happens through relationship. And my senses, my sense and inherent, intuitive, natural state of empathy has developed through being in practice with adults mostly, but also children, lots of children actually. Yeah, over the course of 25 years. Um, Something that you have said twice, and humble apologies, folks. I know that there's like this loud sound in the background. It will turn off in a second. I live off grid, and everything in my life runs on these tiny batteries that overheat. So in order to have the internet on, that sound is going to happen in the background. But something you've said a couple of times is that this path chose you, and that sort of dinged a thing for me about callings. That callings are not often things that we choose. I think in our current Western context, we've been situated to think about how to move our stirrings into a job, how to like move, how I've said this before is like how we move the callings into and through the machine, because things that we do need to be productive. They need to like, it needs to create money, it needs to create resources. Um, and that true callings are actually usually a bit agitating in some way. Like, it will, and I don't mean agitating like necessarily unpleasant, but like it will be a point of friction that creates growth. And I'm hearing that in a bit of what you're talking about. Like, it's not like you feel good in the overstimulation or the, all of the components of it, but the overall tone of it meets some aspect of your soul and your soul's calling. So I'm curious if you have any, if you have any words around the call, because maybe it looks like working with children. Maybe that's an expression of it, but maybe there's an energy that rides underneath that. And you've talked about this a little bit, but maybe I'm asking from like another angle of like, what's the energy that rides underneath um, this call to teach, to work with people, to work with young children?
Um, wow, that's a big one. I think it's creative energy. I think it's I think it's creative use of um my own energies as they pull in. It doesn't always have to be something as creative as painting or something like that, although I have dabbled in that. Um I think it's really a creative calling, and that if I'm not creating space for children to thrive or creating relationships and those new connections, and even in my movement practice and dance and fitness stuff that I do, um, it really needs to be any space where I'm productive needs to be a space where I have a lot of autonomy to be creative, which is another reason why I chose to be self-employed in the education field as opposed to joining a school, an already existing school, is because through the struggles of being self-employed and being a small business owner, which are undoubtedly grueling for anyone who's ever done it. I'm riding a pretty nice train that I've done, put together for myself now, but um, and kind of riding through all of those, you do get a tremendous amount of creativity or use of creativity and autonomy over what you do with that creativity. So I think that might just be like the generator.
That's rad. I'm not totally surprised because I feel, again, like you and I run parallel in this way. Like the primary energy of my life is creativity. And it isn't always about painting, even though painting is a primary thing for me. um, but I love what you were saying about like creating space, like making space. Um, yeah, the underpinner is creative use of my own energy as it's pulling in, and the autonomy to be creative. Yep. And wow, being a business owner, being an entrepreneur in general is like highly creative. Again, that pressure, there's like at some point you begin to have some mastery over the pressure where it doesn't squeeze you into desperation. It squeezes you into creativity. It squeezes you into like finding a new solution to an old problem. And I kind of live for it. Like I think for a while I was like living on the fumes of the desperation. And now I'm like, ooh, like how do I want to solve this problem in a novel way? You are touching in on your movement and strength practices and dance, and I would love for you to talk on that a little bit on when that spark for movement and dance happened for you, like how you recognized that and where it's led you, like where has it led you, and then we'll get into how the practice of that has intersected with like other aspects of your life. But how did it start?
Um, this is another like I'm gonna end up going around and around to get to the point, I think. But um, like so many little kids, my mom tossed me into ballet class at like 3. And absolutely all respect to ballet is an incredible discipline. It's like it's artistic and creative, and you have to have a gift with your body as well. and in the way that your body is structured and moves. And so even though I enjoyed the dance aspect of it, I never had the body that was designed for ballet. um I can move my hips really fluidly and have some interesting types of muscle control that lend themselves more to like belly dancing and things like that. So naturally, and I've developed those over time. Um, Plus, I've, you know, more recently, well, in the past 10 years, but even it's as it's changed over the past maybe 3 years, have really developed an affinity for just that muscle burning, kind of whole body, just sweating, in a form of creative movement, right? That also has to be like safe and like ergonomically correct. So that's where kind of the fitness piece came in. And there's this new terminology that I've been introduced to in the past few months, um, in having a relationship with someone who is a musician, and saying that when you get to a certain place in a practice, whatever that practice might be, for me, my it's movement is part of my practicing, um, where you get like a cognitive flow going, where you're no longer thinking one foot goes here, one foot goes here. If you're playing an instrument, your hand positioning, or um, however that works. But you have so many things kind of like memorized in your body and your muscle movement that you can just go with it. And that has been an incredibly liberating experience for me. And I think that's really where I thrive in a movement practice. Is if you think of, I'm going to go back to painting just because it's easy, I think, also for people to grasp when thinking about art. As you think about like an abstract painting, and the best abstract painters can also paint in like a disciplined way. And I think that that's true for my movement practice as well. Is I needed to get some structure and some discipline behind me with, especially if I'm using, like I said, using dumbbells and doing things ergonomically correct, in order to move into that cognitive flow, creative space that, and I gotta give props where it's owed, where Steph, the owner of the studio, has really trusted her instructors to go into. So, and over time, all of our movement classes at the studio have had some type of foundational structure, but then the instructors are incredibly creative and all have that ability to move that into an abstract place that students really seem to love, because you're really in it. You're really in someone's cognitive flow. So that's another, see, I told you I always go in circles, but to think about how I got into it and why I'm still in it, that's kind of the story.
One needs a foundation in order to move into cognitive flow. They do always say
Yeah.
this with painters. Like Picasso was really, was formally educated and could draw incredibly realistically and progressively move towards expression. And yeah, this might be controversial, but like I feel like a lot of folks, maybe in desperation for not having encouragement to move towards creativity, end up trying to go to personal expression first, and
Yeah.
we might get lost in there. Like we might get lost in there, and that there's something really profound about. And you can always go to it. It's not like it's lost once you've moved into personal expression. I feel like maybe that's an entry point. It can be an entry point,
Yes.
um,
You can go
and that
back
it's
and
not.
forth.
You can always go into foundations, and keep returning to foundations. Like I'm hearing you sort of like recognize even more technical terms around, cognitive flow. It's like like even foundations for how we're thinking about moving into flow rather than it just being like personal expression. It's like there's a state that happens that moves you into that beyond where it's fluid and responsive. Rad. So it got started with ballet.
Structure.
Huh? Started with structure, and then recognizing, and you know what, I noted that you somehow found a way to say that your body wasn't built for ballet without feeling like that was an apology or something. Like, I feel like, yeah, I feel like there can be a stigma on like how rigid that that dance system is, and what you need in order to, you know, succeed in it. And if you don't have that inherently, then you're not included. But you somehow said that in a way that was just like, yeah, I had the structure and and pivoted, you know, where I needed to pivot into something that worked for me. That was just cool to hear, because again, I've heard other folks talk about how they were in ballet and how they didn't have the body for ballet, and so they gave up on dance. You didn't give up on dance. You pivoted towards the things that were for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a respect for ballet and
Yeah.
and ballet dancers. I think it's the really excellent ones. I think it's probably one of those things. It's a calling. And I just didn't feel particularly attached to that form. It was just an entry point for a movement practice, and then, you know, it was adulthood that led me to uh, trying to find a dance class where I would fit in, because I did yoga for a while too. I was like, oh, maybe I'm a yogi, right? Like, I'm flexible, and this seems cool. But it didn't have that like fitness. It does create fitness, and, you know, the more intense forms of yoga certainly can be muscle building, but I just wanted something a little bit more intense, faster, you know. I like that adrenaline piece too that comes with like real vigorous dancing.
You definitely do. I took one of Stacie's classes last year and I was like, well, I mostly kept up. And I felt pretty good about that. Stacie can really move. What you've talked around this a little bit, but one of the questions that I threw your way is, what does practice mean to you? So I'm asking this for a reason, because, and I ask everyone this who comes on this podcast, because one of the reasons why I started Practice Live or having conversations, it was actually called something else like a handful of years ago, because it was just a conversation we were having in the back end of my practice, my service practice. I don't know what else to call it, my community ministry practice. But I've had a daily practice since I was 17, and it has changed forms a lot over the last, since I was 17. And for the last 3,608 days, I've painted every day. And I know that to a T. And for 8 years of that, I made a painting every day. And the tone of what was driving me at first was about trusting the process. It actually wasn't about completing something, but in order for me to trust the process for the first 8 years, I needed to like start and complete something within a day. That has since loosened. And I made like very few rules around what practice meant, but my practice in trusting the process was very much about touching the page of myself every day, because my tendency is to kind of escape. Like, I escape into fantasy, I escape into work, I escape into helping other people. Like, I was creating a lot of throughways out from getting to know myself and having any sense of self-examination on a regular basis. And it produced really crappy things in my life, like that lack of um, earnest engagement with certain aspects of myself, because in other ways I'm hyper aware, but in certain really important aspects of myself, particularly how strongly creativity is a driver for me, and that it's not secondary, it's not fluffy for me. And like when I move into that creative process, I get to know aspects of myself and I'm in contact with aspects of myself. Anyway, talking about painting every day, people got wiggy thinking that they needed to do a thing every day or that they needed to do the same thing every day. And most of the people in my life are not structured like that. Like they're not inherently like disciplined or steady. And so that became daunting and I was like, well, how do we open up this conversation of discipline, of practice without it being punitive, without it being about doing the same thing every day, but more about a quality of approach and something that underpins some aspect of your day consistently, if not daily. So this question, the heart of it is like, what does it mean to you to practice? Is it doing something? Is there a quality there? What does it do for you when you engage with something through your lens of practice?
It's interesting. I wrote this down because I wanted some structure. Okay. So, because you sent me this question before. So I'm just going to read what I wrote, and then talk a little bit about something that you said that I wrote before I heard what you said. Okay. So I wrote, I think of practice somewhat in the same realm as a routine. I think when we start something new, it can feel exciting, right? So you're going to start a practice painting, whatever it might be. You're going to feel great. I have this new thing I'm doing. Okay. And then it can feel more arduous. And then it moves into the practice phase, right? Where it becomes something, okay, I'm beyond the initial excitement of I'm doing this new thing until now it becomes more disciplined, right? I'm practicing is being disciplined about something. And then can settle into a routine. So I don't know if you feel like that with painting. I sometimes feel like that with movement. Like I'm so accustomed to getting up. I do my movement mostly in the morning, early in the morning. So I get up and I do my coffee and I do my movement and it's like becomes really routine. So then I also wrote awareness of routines and when they're not serving us anymore can be part of the practice too, because sometimes routines are familiar and comfortable, but they're not really good for us, or we're not necessarily getting what we got at a certain point. Like, yes, we got the excitement, but we're not necessarily trying to go back to that. We're trying to go back to what the root of the practice really was and where the work was that we were doing when our practice was pre-routine. So, something that you said that I also wrote down was that in my practice, I'm striving to find, excuse me, self-awareness and reflection. So, if I've done the same thing all the time, every day, right, and it feels really routine and I know I can do it, what piece am I holding on to of that because it's comfortable? Where can I let go? And where, even if I don't want to change my practice, I still want to I still want to do a movement practice or I still want to do a painting practice or anything, right? Any walking, people who are walking, people who are sitting, meditating, gardening, all these types of things that also invoke a sense of self-awareness um, into the practice. That's it.
I had so much excitement and I'm really glad I was on mute. Oh, I love this, right? So excitement, novelty, and then moving into where it's arduous.
I hope I
Like,
pronounced that word right because we're
I think
live,
so.
so I can't. I can't
Whatever.
really.
If you're pronouncing it wrong, I am too. People
Okay.
will know what I mean. Um, right? So like I'll share this like shape of what happened for me with daily painting. So I never committed to making a painting every day. That was never my commitment. And in fact, at some point, I was like, I'm beginning to feel restless with this. It took me a long time. It literally took me 2,740 days. It took me 8 years of like making a painting every day. But I began to feel this restlessness and I began to ask myself, am I done painting every day? And instead of throwing it out the window, I began to change some of the shapes. Like, it wasn't about stopping. It was like I needed to allow myself to flex the container a little bit. Um, and I started working bigger because I noticed that the 6x8 papers that I was working on was too small. I outgrew it. And then I began working bigger. And then as I began working bigger, I signed up for an oil painting year-long class and realized it's no longer about making a painting every day. I'm like, I can paint every day. I can visit myself every day in this way, and I don't need to finish something. And it took about a year for that to really turn over and compost the parts that wanted to just throw it out or wanted to grip and hold onto what was familiar and felt like I was failing myself if I stopped making a painting every day, even though that was never the agreement. My agreement with myself was to touch the page every day. So there's this thing of like, it became a routine. There was something novel. I have always painted, but I wanted to paint more. And I wanted to get really good at it because I was good in some ways, but like not in my greatness. And I would take like 7 months and end up with a too tight, too weird thing. Would be like so dissatisfied by it. Um, and it became arduous. Is that the right way to say it? Now I'm questioning whether or not that's the right word. Anyway, arduous? Yeah, that must be it. Um, maybe somebody who's watching live can correct us.
Yeah, type it
I
in the
noticed that
chat if we're pronouncing this wrong. Anybody in there?
um, like I noticed I was beginning to go, "Oh no. Oh no. She left by accident." She'll come back. I noticed I began to be it began to be by rote. Like I kind of was going through motions and had to ask myself some similar questions that Stacie was asking. Yep, welcome back. Um, and in order to bring life back in, all I needed to do is listen for where the parameters needed to stretch. The parameters within my own mind, my perception of the parameters, because it was my own thing. I like no one was going to judge me if I didn't paint every day. But I had a desire and it was changing shape. So you kind of touched on this with like moving into sort of a strength movement dance thing. like it's like it's like here's what's available to me. I need to shape this so it actually suits me. And make that available. So yeah, I just love that. We have like, oh no, I need to ask this one. Particularly this last year. I don't like you have agency on the size of what you want to share. But
Sure.
how has your movement and exercise and dance practice companioned you in times of crisis or change?
Yeah.
Stacie?
So this practice has been with me through several phases of pain. And it's manifested in different ways. It's been an outlet for anger and frustration. It's been a place of the studio itself has been a place of camaraderie and safety. It's been a way that I can come back to myself, into my body when I'm experiencing tremendous amounts of anxiety and uncertainty. Um, as much as we shimmy and shake and do squats and everything, there is a meditative aspect, especially if there's repetition happening with movement, or even if we just take 2 minutes to lay down on the floor at the end of class and cry. And I'm the instructor and I will absolutely cry. Um, I'm sometimes crying the most. um, and in this past year, I've gone through tremendous life changes. I've stepped out of a 20-year relationship with the father of my children, and the routine has been there for me. So my practice was established and I had a routine. Um, and there were days where getting out of bed wouldn't have happened if I didn't have to show up to my practice, to my routine. And shockingly, even shockingly to myself, I still had breakthroughs, creative breakthroughs, despite the fact that it felt arduous. We're going to use that word. If we are using it wrong still, hopefully people are laughing at this point. But even at times where it felt like I can't do this, I had creative breakthroughs. I changed the name and the structure of my class. Again, I have to give credit where it's deserved. I was allowed a tremendous amount of creative liberality in the studio. We started advertising the class differently. We rewrote the bio. I did actually write that bio. And I think that, and what the miracle of it is, or what is amazing about these types of things, is that the routine is what kept me going. But in the changes that I had to make in myself to get through, and I'm still getting through it. It's not yet been a year. So, and I think for people who have experienced the loss of a long-term relationship like mine was, you'll never fully get over it. It's part of who you are. But as I needed to change to be not a different person, but a newer, healthier version of myself, my routine went back into that practice mode without me even having to do any intentional work. It just pulled me back in. Because I had it, like I said, 10 years, I'd had it established for so long. And I also want to say that I'm 40, and when I was 25, or in my 20s, maybe even a little older than that, and I would hear people say what I'm saying right now about a practice or about, excuse me, something in their life that they've had for a long time, the way that it changes, it felt so huge to me. I didn't think I'd ever get anything like that. I didn't think it was even real. I thought these people are wacky, or like I don't even know what it is that I need to do to get there, or I would start and stop things. But knowing as many people as I do now in all different walks of life, not all dancers, not all artists, I know accountants and stuff too. Everyone does have access to something that's calling them. And I love how you said you just needed to touch the page, because for me, I just needed to get out of bed, and I needed to get in my car and go to the studio, and something was going to happen there. And it didn't have to be perfect. And so I think that that's true for everyone. And that was something that I needed to get me through this time right now, was I had to let go of that perfection, and starting these things requires that of you too. So, yeah.
I want to underline and highlight what Stacie just said. Yeah. Yeah. Releasing the perfection, and just getting started. But yes, practice, having the routine established, having practice established, when you moved into a season of crisis, it was there and it got you out of bed. Yeah. Yeah, that.
Like, I
And I know,
think I only missed the studio twice because of the emotional unrest that
yeah,
I was experiencing. Um,
that's profound.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's profound. I went through a divorce 7 years ago, and had to maintain, working for myself, and was like also coming out of a year where I had 3 clusters of seizures, because I'm an epileptic, and like I was just so out of my gourd. and practice, having had my practice established for as long as I had prior to that, I was like, yeah, that it got me out of bed. Like I had a reason to like not I had something to look forward to. That was the energy that I had, cuz like I had to get out of bed for work. Um but like I had something to look forward to. I had something that was mine, that I knew was mine, that was there for me, that I didn't have to like think too hard about, and I could pour myself out and be angry and be sad, and
Mhm.
also recognize through color shifts in my color palette how joy was beginning to seep in, and I was
Yes.
like, wow. And I love what you were touching on of like, even when I was going through all of this, even in the routine, and even though the routine was what was holding me in it, I had creative breakthroughs. And it was really interesting that I'm remembering that year, 2018. I'm like, I had so many breakthroughs in my practice, in my life, because of the crisis and also because of my practice. Like the way that they combined created a foundation for something new to happen. And I also want to say this, like, I want to repeat something I heard you say of like, if I get out of bed and I get in the car and I go to the studio, something will happen there. And it's that I feel like, oh, somebody, I was listening to somebody on YouTube yesterday, and they were talking about how a lot of folks it was a tarot reader, and they were talking about how a lot of folks read sort of like the end result, and they don't really talk about the process of like the actions that it takes to get to that. And so when the end result doesn't happen, you can be really disappointed. Like I've taught art classes for a long time, and you know, in the first few classes of like a 7-week course, people will be like, why can't it just do the thing that I wanted to do? And I'm like, because you actually have to keep showing up. Like you
There's
have
a
to get out of your
process.
car. Yeah, you have to get out of bed and get in the car and go to the studio, and then something will happen. Like like it would have been different for
You have to
you
let go,
even if
and you have to let go of the outcome.
that, right? And that's why for so long for me it was about trusting the process, and then for the last few years it's been about savoring the process. My practice has been about doing what I would enjoy the most,
Mhm.
about showing up to the page. And that tonal shift, mm, like like I enjoy oil painting, which I wouldn't have known if I didn't have this foundation. So, in our last little bit, do you wanna talk about how we found out we're sisters? Um,
Your story, are our versions the same?
no, that's what's fun. I don't think they are, because you found out before, way before I did. You had
Yeah.
a
So
sense
I held
that
on to it for a little while because I thought you wouldn't want me to bother you. I'm like, we're like in our 40s. I did, I was like, who wants to know? I have no idea. I found out so my ex-husband's father, who was my father-in-law, knew your dad, our dad. I have a different dad, but Meg's dad is my biological father. And so he knew him. He knew his name. I had found out his name from my biological mother, and I just kind of was mentioning it like in passing. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, you're his daughter. You're his daughter." Like, oh, he's like, "That makes so much sense." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I had no idea what that meant at all. And then I think I I either looked him up on Facebook, or I found you on social media. No, I found out about Gus first. Um and so I found out about Gus because his mom was also part of the relationship with my father-in-law. And so I found Gus, and then I saw links posted on social media of your dad's passing, and I followed them to find you. And I was like, oh my God, like what? There's like some of your paintings are like in my dreams, kind of thing. It was profound. And I think it was a lot for me. And I didn't know if the big feelings that I we're having were either too much for you or not real, or but it was real. It's real. And my employee, who, it's funny to say she's my employee because in this field we're all co-teachers. There's no like yeah, I run payroll, but other than that, I'm not any more in charge than anyone else. Was a mother figure for you. Yeah. And so she was encouraging me to reach out to you. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And then finally she was like, well, I did. And then you and I connected and haven't stopped connecting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So
is that your version? Yeah, let's hear yours.
Basically, because you have the pre-story, and then I have like after that moment, like after Lori reached out. So we all have different moms. Gus, Stacie, and I have different moms. And Gus and I have known about each other. I came into that constellation of family when Gus was born, briefly, and then it ended up breaking out again. But I had no idea that I had a sister. And not only that we lived like 10 minutes away from each other for when I was in high school. We lived like very nearby. And in fact, one of my friends was like, do you think your dad had a sense that Stacie was like in the town next to you, and that's why he chose for you to go to that high school instead of that one? And I was like, probably. And I instantly burst out crying.
I mean, probably
because he knew about you. So, and that was like tenderness for me to find out about. Like, he knew about you, and I didn't know about you, because our dad died when I was a senior in high school. So yeah, so I'm about to like go on like a few day trip, and I get this like message from Lori. Like, she's like, I'm trying to call you and I can't reach you, and she's like, you may want to sit down for this. And I was like, who died? Like, it didn't occur to me at all that what was about to come out of her mouth. And the thing that welled up in me immediately was like love. Even before I talked with you, I was just like, this is what I've always wanted. I have always been so family oriented, and I don't know. It has just been like the sweetest thing for the last however long it's been, like 18 months or something. I don't know, 20 months. I have no idea. I'm not really good at time.
I never felt like I was an only child. I was raised as an only child. I definitely have some only child traits, but I always felt like I wasn't. And I had feelings that I had a little brother throughout my life. And yeah, it's wild.
And you have a bonus older sister.
And I'm middle child, which doesn't that just make perfect sense?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been profound. And why I'm sort of well, for one, just this is like our coming out party kind of, because for the last March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Okay, so for like almost 2 years now, we've been quiet about this to protect some of your family members, and also just like metabolize it and to be
Right.
in our own relationship without it being some like performative thing. So, but there is a sweetness and a celebration of like, oh, like here we are. Here we are in this same space, and it's so sweet to share this, table with you. We live on opposite sides of the country right now, and yeah, we don't get to see each other all the time. So it's been, it's like so sweet to spend an hour with you on the phone and on the internet, talking about your life. But yeah, but also like there's
it's a reasonable time of day for both of us, because we have spent wacky times of day.
It's really true. And I'm glad I have internet out here now, because now when we talk late, it like makes sense. Because before it was just like dropping the calls. but there's a practice to having capacity for surprise. Like, it was really interesting to feel that layer of surprise of like, oh my gosh, like a whole human family member, like
Mhm.
almost halfway, into my I'm finding out in my midlife, like, yeah, totally. Yeah. Like if I had been if I hadn't practiced the way that I've practiced being with myself, I know for myself that based on my circumstances, I likely would have had a little bit more trauma embedded in all of my responses to things. And through practice, I have resilience. I have capacity for when things surprise me. And this has happened to be like an incredibly profoundly beautiful surprise. But even in not beautiful surprises that have happened in the last decade of my life, practice has been a companion that has kept me anchored, without tying me down to something so harshly, and has expanded my capacity. And so much of what I've heard Stacie say today mirrors that. Like, through practice, there has been capacity to meet crisis. There's been capacity to meet beautiful things that are surprising, and pivot with it, grow with it, move with it. Is there anything you would add to that?
Um, well, I would just say that I part of my not reaching out right away was that I didn't even trust my ability to be able to accept. Now I might cry. And I've learned this so much over this past year that I've had to do this. And I think my relationship with you was such a gentle gift of an introduction to accepting love. And I didn't understand my capacity to accept love and in different forms and non-traditional forms, and accepting it when it comes into your life, even if it's unexpected, even if it's not the right time, because you're 40. You just because I just turned 40, so I was like 38. And I had this kind of like routine of my life and expectations on me, and then these people who are my siblings came in, and we were so ready to love each other, and it was a good way, it was a good introduction to me accepting the love that has shown up for me also in this past year through you and through other friends and relationships that I absolutely did not expect, in a time when it felt like I am, and simultaneously going through such a huge loss. Um, so yeah, just that capacity to be able to accept those things. I didn't trust myself. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, that piece. That piece. Yeah, I haven't known a lot of this is no shade on my family members actually, because honestly, everyone has done the best that they can with the resources that they've had. But um yeah, the consistency you and I have, and the synergy that you and I have, has radically altered my heart. Because idealistically, I've been there, but I haven't had a place to practice this in a way that truly felt like
Safe.
safe, like truly with and safe, and like, um, yeah, I just couldn't be more grateful for you. Like, yeah, I just couldn't be more grateful for you. I'm so grateful. I'm like mushy. It's just like
I know.
I don't I don't have any other words. I'm just like, I can't believe how much this has changed my life, and also how natural it is. It's just really natural. Welp, um, is there something, and you've offered some things to this, but we're at time, we're close to time. Is there something that you would offer as a practice, to those who are watching from your stance of what practice means?
So sometimes I do this really lazy practice where I just have like inspirational cards that I put out for myself. Um, and I just go with that. It doesn't need to like tell the future or like anything wacky like that, but it's just a it's just something I'm touching and something I'm reading, and it doesn't have a lot of pressure to it. So that's a really easy one. Also, I always talk about my dogs. If you're a dog person or a pet person at all, you know, the care of those animals ends up becoming something that you have to do intentionally, and that ideally you're doing with love, even when you don't feel like it. Parenting can be like that as well, although talk about the weight of that. Having a pet is a lot less of that intense. You don't feel the same guilt of like parenting. It's like parenting light. But people can do that with plants. You don't need to get a dog. You know, anything that needs to be cared for on a regular basis requires discipline and can be something that you do creatively. You can bring creativity into it and can become routine, and then there'll inevitably need to be changes to the routine. And even if it's something as simple as repotting your plant or walking your dog on another route because somebody moved into a house with a bigger dog that barks more, you know? So, yeah, it doesn't have to be some like giant creative project that you spend 10 years on or 3,000, how many days?
Oh my God. Totally. Well, I love what you're calling Elise.
It doesn't have to be
It
something
does.
intimidating.
It's true. And that's, again, that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to start this conversation and to make it more and more public, is that, um, you know, some of us are built. I have often said that like there's kind of two general categories of practice. There's achievement practice and there's like alchemical practice. And alchemical practice
Yes.
is like process based and about self development and investigation. Um, and achievement practice is like, I want to, you know, play Carnegie Hall. I'm going to play piano every day until I'm good enough to play Carnegie Hall. And there's a facet of that that I have naturally. But like, I had to move it into an alchemical place of development to loosen that, to like be moved by practice and not just achieve something. It connects my whole body, my whole being, and I needed to be active in that. But I love I love this invitation for something, you know, you're calling it lazy, but I would say like, well, some of us need to practice, you know, quieter or receptive things like pulling a card and seeing what's there and feeling into it. Like that doesn't feel lazy at all to me. That feels like you're allowing a collaboration with life to reflect something to you and give you some new information, or to reflect maybe some similar information. But if you're in that new day and you're really approaching it like a new day of practice, it can give you some new information.
I think people are practicing things that they don't even know that they are, and that they
Totally,
haven't identified it as their practice yet, or they're doing
definitely.
something out of routine that they could use that space for a more meaningful practice. So it doesn't even mean like big life changes or even like adding something to your schedule, because I know that that is impossible. Would be if somebody was asking me to do that, I'd be like, "You're crazy." I get up at 5:30 and my head hits the pillow at 9:30. I'm a mom and
Yep.
a business owner, so I'm not gonna have all this profound time to have these like breakthroughs. Um, but and don't expect breakthroughs. That's the other tricky part too. Is you can't expect that. It's just a way to bring yourself back to yourself. And um, I love finding out things about myself that aren't interesting. That's why I say I'm boring and lazy. Those are things that I figured out through doing really hard things. Like, and even though those sound like negative things that I'm saying about myself, that those attributes help me with my perfectionism. It's to be like, I'm just boring. This doesn't need to be perfect, you know? Um, so even though those sound like they're things that aren't positive, those are nice things that I can say about myself, because my negative self is pushing me to be perfect, pushing me to be, I have no idea. I can't remember it all because I've let go.
Oh man, I love you so much. That's rad. Yeah, I can so tell that we're related too. If I were like just hearing you right now, I'd be like, yeah. Um, yeah, releasing the perfectionist. Yeah, and the shadow being control, right? That like I'm thinking about the architect shadow MO of like it has to be a certain way for me to release it, for me to share it, for me to feel like it's enough and it's
Or I
that
do,
perfectionist.
or it's not
Yeah,
ready. Share
and
it.
it's
It's not
never ready. Like the shadow of that is that it's never ready. And so right? So what does it take? And I love that you're talking about this because I love there's a tone here of like trickster. It's like you kind of have to trick the architect to be like, you're lazy. Like you're lazy and boring. And like dropping in and relaxing with that. And allowing that to be permission. That's cool. We lost you for a second. And we totally lost her for a second. We'll give her a moment to come back. There we go.
hopefully that's the last time I get kicked off because we need to wrap up.
We do need to wrap up. So, and is there anything you're promoting that we can know about? I know you're teaching classes at Hustle and Flow. Is there anything else? And or do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. I
For
mean,
anyone in the Portland, Maine area?
yeah, shameless plug. So I teach a class called Flex Appeal at 7:15 in the morning, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The class is also at 10 a.m. on Sunday with another instructor. Her name's Sky, and I do subs sometimes. And we combine dance. I've been doing some kickboxing stuff because I really like punching and kicking lately. Probably just the where we are in the world right now. It feels really good to just like punch air. And we use dumbbells for strength training because that's what we need to be doing. And there's like some cardio and core strengthening and all your traditional kind of fitness stuff. But we also get our shimmies out. I mean, really, it does it all. And it's 45 minutes. And we still take water breaks. So.
Oh, I'd be there if I lived nearby. You don't happen to do anything online, do you?
No, not really. I have an Instagram.
Follow my sister on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't know I can't even remember the name of it. So don't even ask. No, I don't have any online presence really. I actually kind of hide.
Fair, except your sister who lives in Washington State would love if you had pre-recorded fitness classes. But anyway.
I know so many people have asked me to do that. Maybe 2026.
Yes. Oh, Stacie. I'm going to share a couple of announcements of things that are going on, and then we will close out. I just announced a branch of my practice that I'm starting called Archetype Playhouse. We're going to go all over the world and get weird. We're going to get weird on purpose in order to transmute crisis into novel solutions through playful imagination. And if you want to know more about that, you can find out more on my website. Also, if you're curious about this conversation of practice, I wrote a book on it because I've been obsessed with it since I was a kid, like monastically obsessed. And you can find it on Amazon. It's Don't Just Do Something, Be Here. And I also have the Practice Planner, which is an open date planner that companions you through seasons of practice. And it's really more about the qualities that are riding underneath practice rather than doing something. Because, like we just spent an hour plus talking about, practice is not really doing something, which is subtle. But to actually move into that transformative place, there's a bit of a push and pull, a this and that when you can tune into the parts of the process consciously, you can begin to recognize where you are and to deepen it. So if you want some companionship, I've made resources and I will continue to make resources for practice. We meet here every month on the third Friday of the month, usually at 11 a.m. Pacific. And next month's guest is a gal named Portia, and we're going to get sexy. We're going to get sensual and spiritual, and the spirituality of sensuality. So I hope to see you there. Stacie, You're so lovely. It's been so lovely to hear your thoughts and to go this deep with you, particularly in front of an audience. We've had like a fair amount of people hopping into the live, and it's really profound to hear so much of what's underpinning your beingness, your life. And thank you for saying yes to this.
Well, thank you for hosting.
Well, folks, see you next time. Thanks for being here. Aw, Stacie. Oop. I can't hear you anymore, though. I don't know why.
Just us now?
It's just us now, I think. Right? Right?
Well, I gotta go because
Wait, end the stream.
that last
Didn't actually end.
Oh.
Hold on. I thought it ended. We're still here, they said.